Hello fellow cinephiles, Film Guru here. Today I'm reviewing Adrift. This was directed by Baltazar Kormaku and stars Shailene Woodley and Callum Kaplan. And is the story of Tammy Oldham, played by Woodley, who is a free-spirited young woman who is travelling around picking up work on different ships and in different places, and only moving on when she's able to save enough money. And she has been doing this for 5 years. Upon one of her trips, she meets Richard Sharp, played by Callum Kaplan. Ultimately, a romance begins between the two. Both are similar in ways. They both have a sense of adventure and want to live their life on their own terms. A friend of Richard asked if he would be able to sail their boat back to California, to San Diego, where she's originally from, and they would pay him to do this. So she reluctantly agrees, and they set out on this trip together. As most films in this sort of genre go, it doesn't go according to plan. Struck by a storm which nearly capsizes the boat. Richard is injured, and it is up to Tammy to try and pull things together to repair the ship and to get them back on course. So the film really turns into a fight for survival and about the lengths that people have to go to sometimes in order to survive. And it really looks at the relationship between these two people and how they work together to try and overcome the circumstances that they do find themselves in. And that's ultimately what the film's sort of about, is just this survival story. These sort of films are taken on their own sort of genre, in a way, the true story survival films, and it did feel a lot like All Is Lost. I felt that film encapsulated a lot better than this film did, but this was still a very interesting film. And like I mentioned, it was based on a true story. So Tammy and Richard did exist, and they did go through this traumatic event together. And it really looks at that in this film. Shailene Woodley is an actress I'm really fond of. I've been a big fan of her since The Descendants and a variety of other things she's done. I think she's a really talented actress, and I think she's perfectly cast in this sort of role. She really suits it and plays it very, very well, and she's very interesting to watch within the film. Callum Kaplan, I've seen him in a variety of things, mostly known for the Hunger Games films, but I think he's a very solid actor. He does a very solid job here playing Richard Sharp. The director does a really great job of putting this together. It looks really nice. It's sort of well put together and well acted, and it's a very interesting film. It really looks at a fight for survival and the extremes people will go to in order to survive, and to show how capable people really are when they're thrown into circumstances they're not used to. Within the movie, the Tammy character has sort of sailed a little bit, but not a lot, but it's up to her to hold everything together to sail this ship back to land. The motor's dead, and all she can do is sort of steer this thing and let it adrift in a certain direction, and she tries to calculate where she is via that. And as it's been reported, Woodley lost a lot of weight for the role, and you can really sort of tell as the film goes on, she gets skinnier and skinnier, and you can really tell that she's put a lot of effort into this. Her name is on it as producer, so it looks like she's really heavily involved in it, and it's a story that she felt she needed to tell. Look, in this sort of thing, it's a very solid, well-made film, absolutely, and I enjoyed a lot of elements to it, especially Shailene Woodley's performance, and the shots of this boat on the ocean is very well done, and I'm very impressed with the way that's sort of put together and looks. Being trapped on a boat on water is not my idea of fun, but I do like these sort of movies to see how these people overcome the obstacles that they do face. The only criticisms I would have of this film is it's told in a broken up sort of way. The movie jumps back and forth between present day and the past, and showing how the circumstances led them to be in this sort of situation. And by doing that, I felt it sort of took you out of the film. There's too much of it. I felt if we were going to start at the end or midway to the end, then why don't we just go back completely and tell that full story? It just felt like they didn't have enough faith in the story to tell a straight sort of story, that they had to break it up like this. And I know that there's been a lot of films done like this and they're trying to do something different. I do respect that, but that was just something that took me out of the film. And even though Shailene Woodley and Callum Kaplan do a really great job here, there's only a small amount of chemistry between both of them. There's not enough, I don't feel, between them to sustain this sort of film, to tell this sort of story, because it's sort of ultimately a love story and what these people go through and have to survive and and the love that they have for each other. And I just felt that was lacking a little bit in this film as well. And I just felt the film wasn't as impactful as it could have been. But the positives with it are, it's, like I said, well shot, well put together. It's an interesting film, an interesting story, an interesting true story. And it really looks at a strong female character and what she has to do in order to get her and Richard to safe. And I think it's a really powerful performance that Shailene Woodley gives, and it's an interesting character. And I'd like to know more about this story because it sounds like a really fascinating, interesting sort of story. And there's been a lot of interesting movies being made based upon short stories or newspaper articles, and this is one of those sort of films, but I did quite enjoy it. Look, final verdict. Look, it's a solid film. I call it a solid and well-made film. It's an interesting subject matter. It's an interesting story. The fact it's based on truth is an interesting sort of thing as well. So if you like those sort of things, you may enjoy it. If you enjoy either one of the actors, you might thoroughly enjoy this as well. I don't know if this film's going to be for everyone, but it is definitely a solid film and worth a look. Look, I'm going to give this film 3.5 out of 5. I think it's above average. Not a brilliant film, but an interesting film nonetheless. And I enjoyed many elements to it, just not everything. But my hat's off to them for the film they made. And I think it's a very interesting sort of movie. Anyway, that's all from me today. If you've enjoyed what you've heard here, please subscribe down the bottom. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.